Welcome back. Chart 27, Omitting If. So, please take a look at, actually, before I start telling you about this, how to do it, let me tell you something important about it. The grammar that I'm about to teach you is old-fashioned and pretty formal. We don't use it very much in spoken English. So it's old-fashioned, it sounds old-fashioned and formal. It is correct, and you can use it in papers and in speaking, but it's very seldom used. We don't use it very much in speaking. Another thing about the grammar that I'm about to teach you, you never need to use it. You can use it, but you never need to. So if you look at this and you say, I really don't want to remember another thing, you could go from now until you're 110 and never use this. But let me show you what it is. So this is omitting if, and the word omit means taking it out. So sometimes when a sentence starts with if, I can take if out. Let me show you how I do that. If John had studied more, he would have earned a higher grade. Okay? The way that I get rid of if is, well, first I get rid of if, and then I take the first word of the verb and I move it to the front. Let me move this out. So I'd get, had John studied more, he would have earned a higher grade. The two sentences, if John had studied more, he would have earned a higher grade, and had John studied more, he would have earned a higher grade, mean exactly the same thing. The second one, had John studied more formal, don't use it as a little old-fashioned, don't use it as much when we're talking. Okay, so what I do is, step one, I get rid of if. Step two, I take the first word of the verb and move it to the front. Okay? Now, let's take a look at this. If I were president, I would have acted more swiftly to stop the virus. Okay? Now, again, the way I do this is, I get rid of if, and I move the first word of the verb to the front. Here, there's only one word to the verb, so that's the one I'll move to the front. So I'd say, were I president, I would have acted more swiftly to stop the virus. So, pretty simple. I get rid of if, I take the first word of the verb and move it to the front. Something important to know. I cannot do this with all verbs. So remember that. That's important to remember. I can do it with had, especially when had is the first part of past participle. First part of past perfect. Especially when had comes with can't talk. When had comes with a past participle, I can do this with had. So I can do it with had, and I can do it with be. I can do it with were. So I could say, were I president? Okay. Usually we don't do it with other verbs. Okay? So I can do it with had, I can do it with were, and there's one more. But I don't do it with, again, I don't do it with most verbs. So the other one is should. Now, I can't talk tonight. I don't know why. You might notice that I put should in green. Why did I do that? I made this sentence in green because these two sentences are imaginary sentences. This sentence, when I use should, it's not imaginary. It's something that I think is possible, not just my imagination. So if anyone should have a question, you can email me. It's possible someone would have a question. I use should in if sentences that I think are possible. Now, it mentions this in chart 22. I don't think that I mentioned it. So let me tell you a little bit about what that means, if anyone should have a question. This basically means the same as if anyone has a question. These two, if anyone has a question, if anyone should have a question, they mean the same thing. Should here doesn't have its usual meaning. Should usually means this is a good idea. Like, oh, you should change the oil in your car every 5,000 miles. Or you should brush your teeth 3 times a day. It's a good idea. Here, should does not mean that. It's just a different way of saying if anyone has a question, if anyone should have a question. They're the same. Now, actually, they're almost the same. There's a small difference. Should makes it gives it a little bit more of a feel of maybe. Both of these kind of have a feeling of maybe, but should makes it a little more maybe, a little bit more unsure. Again, should is something you never have to use if you don't want to. You can always just say, if anyone has a question. But since we're learning this now, and it's in your book, let's take a look at this. The way that I make this sentence with should, the way that I omit if, is exactly the same way that I did up here. So take a minute, look at this sentence with should, and ask yourself, how would I get rid of if? Pause if you need to, and think. I'm going to tell you right now, so pause if you haven't got it. So, step number 1, I get rid of if. Step number 2, I take should, and I move it to the front. And I get, should anyone have a question, you can email me. Okay. I'm going to keep this video short. The main reason is, like I said, this is old-fashioned, this is formal, and you never need to use it. But the things to remember, let's just go over the main ideas. I can do this with had, I can do this with were, I can do this with should. I usually don't use it with other verbs. The other thing is, when I want to do it, I just get rid of if, and I move the first word of the verb to the front. I think that's everything I need to tell you about this. Okay.